The big topic that's on the top of everybody's mind, of course, is artificial intelligence. If you weren't aware, that's what AI stands for. And let's dig in a little bit. So, artificial intelligence, it's been a buzzword, but it's still relatively new. It's super fast though. It's evolved so rapidly that I feel comfortable saying it's here. It's arrived. It's something you should be using. And folks in the industry have been talking about this. The IEEE, for example, has done their annual impact of technology survey, and AI was voted to be the most important technology of 2024. And actually, it was 2-1 versus second place. Twice as many technologists thought that AI was going to be the most significant technology this year. Also, from the AV world, don't take my word for it. Alan Braun, who you're probably familiar with, says AI is a game changer. It's fair to claim that it's on par with the Industrial Revolution or invention of the PC or the internet. So, lots and lots of people are studying where it's at, where it's going, what it can do, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So you might be familiar with Gartner and their model called the hype cycle. This is the surge that we see and the kind of settling out of what happens with a brand new technology. So there's this trigger that happens at the very beginning, and then it just completely peaks. They call it the technology trigger and the peak of inflated expectations, which I think is pretty amusing, actually. I like this model a lot. Then there's a little bit of a decline. Things fall off, and we enter the trough of disillusionment, which is actually where generative AI, which is what we'll talk about today, is. On the Gartner model, if you look it up, we're right about here. So we've fallen a little bit. There's a little bit more to go. But what happens now is folks like you and me figure out what makes it useful, what we can do that's not gimmicky, that's actually practical, and how we can add productivity to what we do in our daily lives, and we reach this plateau of productivity. So that's the shape of the hype cycle, and we're estimated or forecast rather to reach this plateau of productivity in the next 2 to 5 years. So the time to learn about it is now. I had AI generate an image of this hype cycle for us, and I think it's hilarious. I like especially this sluke of productivity. You can also see something there. I think the patriarchy's hiding. These are really fun, but if you step back, this is actually really incredible. I wrote a sentence and a computer generated an image, and it filled it with plausible letters and plausible locations, and this is really quite a thing. So I've got a few more of these to look at, but let's do our first poll. I'm curious from the attendees that we've got today, how frequently do you use AI? I will say that I use AI every single day. It doesn't have to be this complex, super in-depth, high-tech kind of a thing. I've simply replaced my search engine with it. I'll ask a question to the AI that's built into my browser or the app I've downloaded on my phone to help me find things. And then instead of, getting 8 results and clicking through 3 of them to find what I'm looking for and that kind of thing, I ask the whole question. I can say, I want a restaurant that has this kind of food, nicer than just a panini oven. And they have to be open on Mondays at 11. And I'm also driving from here to there, so I'd like it to be in that range of locations. You can specify a prompt like that and get results, and it's really a cool thing. Kaylee, I'm curious if you mind chiming in. How frequently do you use AI?
I will be honest, not as often as I do now. Since we started this, putting together this presentation, I actually generated some of the images for our sections with this. I couldn't find the exact one that I wanted. And so I went to Microsoft Copilot and became friends with it, because like you said, you just sit there and you have a conversation, and I would ask for a specific image. And at one point I was like, oh, this is great, but we're doing this for higher ed. I need the people to look a little bit older than kids. And so just kind of went back and forth with it, and it was really fun to play around with.
Yeah. So you can see our poll results here. We'll say, 30% to a third use AI rarely or never. We've got 17% or so that are daily users. So a pretty interesting spread. And I'm a little surprised that this monthly column isn't a little bit higher, but it's very interesting. So thanks for that little bit of insight. So I think it's healthy at this point in the conversation to have a little bit of a disclaimer about AI. Another amazing graphic of the hype cycle here. You should only use AI products for work purposes that are approved by your institution. There's a lot that goes into this. You probably have, committees of faculty and IT folks and InfoSec and risk management and everybody else looking at what is and isn't appropriate. So don't be the weak link that causes a breach or rocks the boat with that. Be mindful of sensitive information. I'll call back to the institution I used to work for. They've got 4 different categories of data. They have public information, internal information, sensitive, and highly sensitive. Those are the 4 tiers of how they categorize data. And if you're using their approved platform, their tenant with their license that they've set the privacy settings for and everything else, they can actually go up to sensitive information. They can't do highly sensitive, but it's more enabling than you might think to follow the rules on that front. Know that AI will make mistakes. For example, this image on the left, if you were looking for real words, it's not going to do it. So expect it, have fun with it, learn from it. You should review everything that you're getting as a result from AI because of many, many different reasons. There's bias, there are inaccuracies, there's this thing called hallucinations, there's a lot of that kind of thing. So make sure that there's still a human as the filter before something gets published, of course. And also be transparent when you've used AI. It's no secret that the images in a lot of this presentation have come from it. It's a valuable tool. Use it, but I'm not a copyright lawyer. I don't understand fully what would be fair use and how ownership works with these kind of authored things. If you're an expert on that, you can trailblaze there, but being transparent is a great policy. Most importantly, though, don't forget to have fun. It is a tool, it is entertaining, it's very, very useful, but have some fun with it. And you might find things that you wouldn't have otherwise if you're going at it very systematically. So we're going to do another poll question. I'm curious, for the folks that hesitate, what holds you back from using AI more? Possibilities here, a lack of skills or understanding how to use it, being unsure of what its usefulness is or where to apply it. Of course, then privacy, policy, information security, that kind of thing. Trusting results, I already name dropped hallucination. That's definitely a thing that exists. Or other, if you've got something that we're not focusing on here, drop it in the chat. It'd be very interesting for the rest of the group to read that and learn from what your experience has been. See a couple of chats, but instead of screwing up my windows, I'll just bring over the poll results here. A lot of folks, 41%, are saying trusting the results, having confidence in accuracy of what's coming out. Ranked second, unsure of its usefulness or where to apply it. This lands about what my hunch was, but of course it's different for everybody. We're all in different job roles and have different things that we need from it and that it can help us with. So let's talk about that.
Real quick, I saw one that I really liked an answer. It said,
Yeah,
he said, other, I like figuring things out for myself. I like
yeah.
that.
So I've got a list here of common terms from the AI world, and you can read some of these, object-based encoding, narrow intelligence, recurrent neural nets, machine learning, convolutional neural nets. This is a really, really deep topic. I mean, this is an academic discipline that people are doing research on, writing new papers. I'm sure there's a inrush of PhD, doctoral dissertations, and things like that. This is a really deep subject that we could do a deep dive on for hours and hours and hours. So instead, let's step back just a little bit. We're only going to talk about generative AI, the kind of thing that's probably already built into your web browser that you might have asked questions to and used already. And an example of that, the 3 most common types of AI that you or I are likely to deal with on a daily basis are NLP, which is natural language processing. These are your chat bots, your AI meeting note-taking bots, things that can do live transcription and translation, things like that. Visual analysis is a big category that we probably interact with on a daily basis. Facial recognition, automatic camera tracking and framing, things like that. In the industrial world, they do use the term machine learning and machine vision. That would be object detection. And then pattern recognition. This is when you're scrolling through your Netflix or your Hulu, they're using services that have AI underneath the hood that make those recommendations. Your social media algorithms, things like that. It's also how you do fraud detection when something seems out of character or you get data that's And out of family value, if you're a space nerd, those kinds of things you can use pattern recognition and predictive analysis for. Another way that we might have all used AI already is in the hardware that we put in our rooms. So I mentioned with the visual models, auto framing and auto tracking that's built into a lot of cameras. Sometimes these go as far as facial recognition and identifying, this is the professor, follow them. This is a student, don't follow them, that kind of thing. There are AI ways that you can do activity identification. For example, if you've got one PTZ camera covering a whole room and you start writing on a whiteboard, it knows to switch modes and frame up the whiteboard and try to view that and make that part of your meeting. Noise reduction is very common in advanced microphone systems. There are other things you can do, like counting occupancy and creating reports on room utilization, things like that. You could get a report after a meeting about engagement. I've heard folks talk about, wouldn't it be cool if you could have a meeting in a video conference room and see how many of the people are on their cell phones, or if you hand out a piece of paper, how many people actually read it versus just watching the screen, that kind of thing. So those are kind of forward thinking and have the future in mind. With the prompting that we can do, let's learn a little bit about creating effective prompts. The quality of the results that you get from AI are directly proportional to the quality of the prompts that you put into AI. In the audiovisual world, the phrase we always use is garbage in, garbage out. It's no different here. So one model that you might think about using is called the RACEF method. RACEF stands for role, action, context, examples, and format. So the idea here with role especially, give it an identity. Tell it who you want it to respond as. If you plan a hiking trip with a geologist, you're going to have an entirely different trip than if you planned it with a botanist or somebody from the Audubon Society, right? If you're trying to work up a budget for a family vacation this summer, something like that, you'll get different responses if, for example, in my world, your wife is a finance director, right? So you're telling it more about the context, the vocabulary, the kind of information that you're looking for, and giving AI a role in your prompt can be a great way to do that. Tell it the action. This could be what step of the process you're in. If you're writing, a program report or a final report, or drafting questions for a focus group or something like that, every different step of a process that you're in is going to require a little bit different kind of action. And the more specific you can be in laying that out, the better results you're going to get from your AI. Context and examples, you can say, I really like this report from EDUCAUSE. Let's write something similar to that. And it can guide you through those kinds of things. Other examples would be, here's the report we're competing with, or here's what we'd like to emulate, that sort of thing. And lastly, in this model is what format you want the results in. Do you need a bulleted list? Do you need a budget and a spreadsheet? Do you need a PowerPoint presentation? Is it drawing you a picture or writing you a song? Tell it what format you want the output to be in. And if you've written all of that information out, you'll get a much more specific and personalized, custom tailored result from what you've asked. If you look up the RACEF method, you'll also see two different spellings. Sometimes folks add an S for steps. You can say, I'd like you to go through this step, and at this preliminary checkpoint, let's talk about it. And then when we get to this, I want to preview what the images are before we put them into the presentation, that kind of thing. Another model you might have heard of is called the 5S method. It's very similar, right? It's about giving all the details, all the context, all of the information. It's not 8 words into a search engine. It's you writing pages of information, almost like instructions to give to a coworker or an employee. So the 5 S's are set the scene, be specific, simplify your language, structure the output, and share feedback. Other things that you can do, of course, this is an iterative process. Once you've got preliminary results, you can shape it and steer it and change things. You can ask questions, help me understand why this is something you thought was significant, or walk me through your thinking. A really powerful one I kind of alluded to is simply by saying, let's take this step by step. Instead of performing 9 steps and giving you one result, your AI tool is going to say, oh, well, here's what I thought we should start with. Maybe rank those. Tell me which one I should put more emphasis on. And these things that would branch into a million different directions, you can steer and custom tailor every step of the way. Role reversal is an interesting concept here. You could say, I'm creating a presentation for a marketing team and I don't speak their language. What do I need to know before I walk into that room? And it can help you figure out what questions to ask, what you should include in your prompt so you're not leaving anything out. It'll do exactly what you say, but you can ask, help me understand what I need to understand before I'm in this interaction. Another one, and I think this is my favorite, is called emotional prompting. The way that AI does resource allocation when you're asking it questions and giving it tasks, you can manipulate a little bit. So if you say, I need this presentation to be spectacular so that afterwards I can go rescue a trapped kitten in a tree, it will give you a different result. And it is fascinating and hilarious. Definitely try it. One of my other favorite things to do with AI is just having a conversation. If I'm working on something by myself, all my thoughts are in my head. If you're a person like me that talks out loud to think and you realize things as you're saying them sometimes, you can have a conversation with AI and say, how do you think this will be received? Or maybe this reads a little bit wrong. Let's change the wording. Or is this important enough to have its own bullet point, or should we just scrap it and leave it out of the presentation? So you could turn solo individual work time into a team conversation, and it's a lot of fun. One other thing to think about is using multiple AI systems or services in your workflow. So the example I've got here, a friend of mine named Zach, he 3D prints swords and armor and costumes from movies and props and all kinds of things like that. His current project is 3D printing a deck of playing cards, and he's using AI to create the artwork for all of his face cards. So your, wizards and knights and elves and things like that, he'll use, I think it's GPT plus, to write a prompt, and he ends up with pages of information exactly how he wants the shoes to look and how he wants the hilt of the sword to be and what pose they're in and everything like that. Asking that service to custom tailor it to optimize it for the tool he's going to use second. I believe he uses Dolly then, and he gets spectacular results. So don't think of AI as a one-stop shop. You can chain these together and use one tool to enhance another. One more real life example. This might hit a little bit closer to home if we've got any control system programmers on the call. AI will do some programming for you. So I know that there's, I think it's a Copilot integration right now in GitHub. This is just playing around with GPT in the right panel where you actually see the code is a service they offer called Canvas. You can give it a prompt and tell it to spit out code and then say, that didn't work. What should I test next? What should we change in the code? What should I troubleshoot? And it can help you through that process.